picture this. You're driving down the highway, and you see this massive billboard.
Right.
And it's got a picture of someone hiking up a mountain, looking perfectly healthy, totally pain-free.
Yeah.
And the text just boldly promises to, cure your arthritis or even reverse aging.
Oh, yeah, you see them everywhere now.
Right. And they say they're doing it using the miracle of stem cells or something called exosomes. So you get curious, you do a quick search on your phone later, and you find out you are definitely not alone.
Not even close.
I mean, there has been a staggering 557% year-over-year surge in consumer interest for exosome therapies.
Wow. Yeah, that's massive.
It's huge. It sounds like an absolute miracle, right? Like a literal fountain of youth. Yet, if you look at the FDA and global regulatory bodies, they are flashing these massive, urgent warning signs.
Yeah, we are looking at a really profound contradiction here. You have a market that is just exploding with enthusiasm. I mean, commercial clinics are popping up on every corner.
Like coffee shops at this point.
Exactly, and that is running completely parallel to a regulatory and scientific establishment that is practically screaming for everyone to hit the brakes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our stack of sources today is incredibly diverse. We're pulling from FDA warning letters, international stem cell guidelines, clinical practice reviews, and there's this fascinating qualitative study on patient psychology published in the journal Frontiers.
That study is really eye-opening.
It is. And the core mission of this deep dive is really to figure out how ethical clinicians are supposed to manage this modern medical paradox. I mean, patients are flooding into their offices asking about off-label regenerative claims, right? And doctors have to somehow communicate this really hard boundary between heavily marketed therapies and actual established clinical trial evidence.
It's an incredibly difficult position for any medical professional because, I mean, the underlying biology of exosomes is genuinely fascinating. It holds incredible long-term promise.
But there's a catch.
A big catch. Navigating the gap between preclinical promise, what works in a petri dish or in a mouse model, and the commercial exploitation we are seeing right now, well, it requires serious critical thinking.
Yeah, so before we can even look at how clinicians manage those really difficult patient conversations, we need to establish what exactly is being sold here. Like, why is it causing such a regulatory crisis?
That's a good place to start.
Because the word exosome is thrown around as this marketing buzzword, but the biology itself is a highly specific mechanism. So think of it this way. If the cells in your body are factories, producing whatever it is your body needs to function, exosomes are kind of like the shipping packages.
Or the text messages sent between those factories.
Exactly. Text message is a great analogy. They're these tiny vesicles, like 30 to 100 nanometers wide, and they contain proteins, lipids, and RNA. It's basically how cells communicate and give each other instructions.
Right. They act as intercellular messengers. So a stem cell might release exosomes that travel to, say, a damaged muscle cell. And it essentially delivers a biological text message that says, hey, reduce inflammation and start repairing.
Which sounds incredible. You can see the marketing appeal immediately. We saw this in the materials from places like the Longevity Medical Institute. They tout exosomes as delivering these anti-inflammatory signals and precise healing directly to damaged tissue.
And they charge a premium for it.
Oh, absolutely. They're charging anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000 an injection for these cellular text messages.
What's fascinating here is the massive disconnect between that biological science and the actual law governing it.
Right. The legal side is a whole different beast.
Totally. Under U.S. law, exosomes are classified as Section 351 products.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they are biological drugs. They require full Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 clinical trials before they can legally be sold to the public.
And that's not a fast process.
No, it is an extremely rigorous process. Phase, it just looks at basic safety in a tiny group. Phase 2 tries to establish an actual effective dose. And then Phase 3 tests it against the current standard of care in a massive population.
So we're talking years.
We're talking 8 to 12 years, typically.
Yeah.
And hundreds of millions of dollars to prove safety, efficacy, purity, and potency.
But wait, I've seen clinics bypass this entirely. Like, they claim regulatory pathway that allows certain human cells to be used without full FDA approval.
Right, the 361 pathway. The classic example there is a basic bone graft.
Okay.
But to qualify for that 3 and 61 pathway, the tissue has to meet very strict rules. Specifically, it has to be minimal manipulation and homologous use. It can't be heavily altered.
And exosomes don't fit that.
Not at all. Isolating exosomes does not fit the definition of minimal manipulation. To harvest them, you have to take cells, usually from fat or umbilical cord tissue, and culture them in a laboratory.
Right, you're growing them.
Yeah, you place them in plastic dishes, in this artificial nutrient broth, and you often have to stress those cells to get them to secrete exosomes in large enough quantities.
Wow, okay.
A cell sitting in a plastic dish in a lab is in a radically different environment than a cell sitting in human tissue. The stress signals change, the text messages it sends out change.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The message changes based on the environment.
Exactly, and the FDA has been explicitly clear about this. Culturing cells and extracting their exosomes fundamentally alters the biological product. So they are drugs, and they are not exempt from the clinical trial process.
Okay, but I have to push back here on behalf of the listener.
Mm.
Because if you read the preclinical data in our sources, it is incredibly compelling. I mean, mice are healing, tissue in cell cultures is regenerating.
It is impressive data, yes.
Right. So if the science is demonstrating this kind of potential, these 12-year FDA delays start to look like, I don't know, bureaucratic gatekeeping. It feels like the government is just stopping people from getting a treatment that already exists.
I hear that a lot. But the FDA isn't demanding these trials just to be slow. Bypassing standardization and safety testing leads to catastrophic results in the real world.
Like what?
Well, without standardized dosing or purity checks, a clinician has absolutely no idea what is actually in that syringe. Our sources cite a 2019 case in Nebraska where patients contracted severe sepsis from an unapproved exosome intervention.
Oh my God, sepsis. But it's not just about bacterial contamination from a poorly regulated lab, right?
No, the biology itself can turn against you.
Because exosomes promote cellular growth,
Oh.
which is fantastic if you want to heal bad knee cartilage. But it becomes an absolute nightmare if there are undetected cancer cells in the patient's body.
Exactly.
The sources documented this terrifying case in Japan where a patient received a secret exosome injection at a famous beauty clinic.
Yeah, the lung cancer case.
Right. Shortly after the injection, an existing lung cancer rapidly enlarged. The growth signals from the unproven therapy essentially fed the malignancy. It told the cancer to grow.
And there was another case published in the New England Journal of Medicine detailing a spinal cord glioproliferative lesion that was caused by stem cell tourism.
Wow. A spinal cord lesion.
Introducing these powerful biological signaling packages into the human body without knowing the proper dose or the exact contents or the long-term effects, it carries immense physiological risk. Which is why, as of 2026, there are exactly 0 FDA-approved exosome products for therapeutic use.
Zero. Wow. So if there are 0 approved products and people are suffering severe adverse events like sepsis and rapid tumor growth, you'd think these clinics would be completely empty.
You would think so.
But they're not. They are packed, which tells me the driving force here isn't the biology at all. It's what's happening in the patient's heads.
You've hit the nail on the head. The decision-making process for someone seeking these therapies is rarely driven by clinical data. It is deeply emotional. It's usually rooted in the sheer desperation of chronic pain or degenerative disease.
And that qualitative study from the journal Frontiers really highlighted this. The researchers conducted in-depth interviews with dozens of patients dealing with chronic illnesses.
It's a fantastic paper.
It really is. They mapped out the psychology of patients considering these therapies and divided them into 2 main camps, low seekers and high seekers.
Right.
So low seekers had very little interest in unproven therapies, while high seekers were highly motivated to try them or had already paid thousands of dollars out of pocket for them.
And the defining difference between these two groups wasn't their level of physical pain. It wasn't the severity of their disease either.
Which is surprising, right?
Very. The difference was entirely about their relationship with trust and medical authority.
And those trust dynamics play out in some fascinating ways. There was this striking anecdote in the sources about a low seeker who went to an unproven clinic. He was seeking relief for peripheral neuropathy.
The guy who got the price quote.
Yes. The provider quoted him an astronomical price of $31,000. And when the patient hesitated, the provider and the recruiter left the room, came back a minute later, and immediately dropped the price to $21,000.
Just slash 10 grand off the top.
Exactly. They offered to, quote, just treat your hands and not your feet.
It's basically treating medical care like a high-pressure sales tactic at a car dealership.
Well, the patient actually used that exact analogy. He said it felt like selling Lamborghinis and Maseratis.
It is so telling.
For that low seeker, the financial bargaining instantly destroyed any illusion of medical legitimacy. He walked right out because he couldn't trust a doctor who negotiated healthcare protocols based on what his wallet could afford.
But high seekers process these exact same interactions entirely differently. They often overlook the exorbitant cost. In fact, they view the high price tag as paying for a premium, cutting-edge service.
Interesting. So the price makes it feel more exclusive.
Yes. They are drawn to clinics that offer what the conventional medical system often lacks: time, empathy, and emotional support.
The sources mentioned these unproven clinics often feature, like, spa-like environments, soothing music, personalized vitamin drips. They are selling an experience.
Exactly. High seekers in the study reported that their conventional doctors often felt dismissive or rushed, or they lacked empathy when delivering bad news. They felt abandoned by standard medicine.
Which is a terrible feeling.
It is. So when a provider at an unproven clinic sits with them for a full hour, listens to their fears, and offers hope, even if it's unproven hope, it builds an incredibly strong bond of trust. The study also documented a profound mistrust of conventional medical institutions among high seekers.
And it goes way beyond just having a doctor with a bad bedside manner, right?
Mhm.
The researchers impartially documented that many high seekers actually hold conspiratorial views about the medical establishment.
They do.
They reported this belief that the FDA and major pharmaceutical companies actively collude to suppress stem cell and exosome cures. In their worldview, those regulatory delays we talked about aren't about safety. They were about protecting corporate profits from ongoing treatments that just, manage symptoms.
Right. And if a patient genuinely believes the FDA is intentionally hiding a cure to protect pharmaceutical profits, handing them an FDA warning letter isn't going to scare them away from a clinic.
It backfires.
Exactly. It acts as validation. The logic becomes, well, the government is trying to shut this clinic down, therefore the clinic must possess the real cure. It is an absolute psychological minefield for an ethical clinician to navigate.
We also have to look at the influence of the patient's inner circle, too, because the sources show that both high seekers and low seekers rely really heavily on their friends and family to make these decisions.
The research highlights a very specific behavioral pattern here called protective buffering.
Protective buffering.
Yes. This happens when the friends or family members of a patient, particularly a high seeker with a severe illness, deliberately suppress their own doubts about an unproven treatment.
So, like, a spouse might look at a $10,000 exosome injection protocol and secretly think, this is a total scam.
Yeah.
But they hide that fear to preserve the patient's hope.
Precisely. They don't want to be the one to crush their partner's spirit when they are desperately searching for a lifeline.
Wow. That's heartbreaking, really.
It is, but it creates this echo chamber of hope, completely isolated from clinical evidence. The patient looks around, sees that their family isn't objecting, and assumes everyone is fully on board, which just reinforces their decision to move forward with a potentially dangerous procedure.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Knowing all of this, understanding this massive psychological divide where one patient wants hard evidence and the other is desperate for hope and actively distrusts the medical establishment, how does an ethical clinician actually manage a consultation?
That's the real challenge on the ground.
Because when a patient comes in asking about the billboard they saw on the highway, a doctor can't just throw a giant FDA manual at them.
No, the primary goal for the clinician is to maintain the therapeutic relationship. The International Society for Stem Cell Research, the ISSCR, provides guidelines for these exact scenarios.
Okay, what do they suggest?
Clinicians are advised to avoid any promotional or promissory language, but instead of shutting the patient down with a flat no, which, as we discussed, might just drive them straight into the arms of a predatory clinic, the clinician arms the patient with a framework, a way to evaluate these providers themselves.
Right. Our sources from organizations like Unicorn Bioscience and Denver Regenerative Medicine outline this research readiness score. It's basically a checklist of red flags and green flags. The doctor essentially empowers the patient to be their own investigator.
That's a great way to approach it.
And looking at this checklist, touting the sheer volume of exosomes seems to be a major red flag. Like, clinics advertise millions of exosomes in every injection, or billions of exosomes.
Which sounds incredibly impressive to a layperson. But as we established with the clinical trial phases, Exosome dosing in humans has not been defined.
Right.
No phase 2 trial has established exactly what dose produces what outcome for any specific condition. So using cell counts as a marketing metric is basically selling the illusion of precision.
It's like a restaurant bragging that they put 3 million grains of salt in your soup.
Yeah,
I mean, the number is huge, but it doesn't mean it's an effective or safe recipe.
that's a perfect analogy.
Another major trap I see on this checklist is the FDA-registered claim. Clinics plaster this all over their websites.
Oh, this is a big one. There is a critical difference between a facility being FDA registered and a product being FDA approved.
They sound so similar, though.
That's the trick. FDA registered is essentially just an administrative filing. A facility pays a fee and fills out a web form to tell the government they exist and that they handle human tissue.
That's it.
That's it. It does not mean the FDA has reviewed, cleared, or approved any product made at that facility for safety or efficacy. The FDA has actually cited this specific misrepresentation in multiple warning letters, demanding clinics stop using facility registration to imply product approval.
Unbelievable. And then there is the for research purposes only loophole.
Another classic misdirection.
Right. So a manufacturer sells vials of exosomes to a clinic, and there's a label explicitly stating for research and investigational purposes only. But the clinic turns around and injects it into a paying patient anyway, assuming the disclaimer sticker protects them from liability.
And the FDA has addressed this tactic directly. They sent warning letters to companies like New Life Medical Services and Chara Biologics in 2025, as well as issuing a debarment order for a distributor named Kosel Chiron.
Kosel Corona, yeah.
The regulatory stance is crystal clear. If the marketing materials, the dosing protocols, and the sales practices show that the product is being sold for clinical use in patients, slapping a research-only disclaimer on the vial does not magically change its classification. It remains an unapproved drug.
Okay, so if FDA registered is just a meaningless paperwork trick and for research only is a liability dodge, there has to be actual regulatory paperwork that proves a clinic is conducting a sanctioned legal trial.
Right.
Like, what is the actual document a patient should demand to see?
The ultimate safeguard is the FDA-issued Investigational New Drug Application Number, the IND number.
The IND number, got it.
Right. If a clinic is participating in legitimate exosome research, they will be operating under an active IND application authorized by the FDA. This means they have submitted thousands of pages of safety data and preclinical evidence to the government just to get permission to test on humans. They will easily be able to provide that number.
And they will also have an institutional review board, or IRB, consent form, right?
Yes, exactly.
That document clearly outlines the experimental nature of the treatment, the known risks, and the fact that it is part of a formal trial. And importantly, in a legitimate clinical trial, the patient usually isn't paying $10,000 out of pocket to act as a test subject.
No, they aren't. If a patient asks for an IND number and the clinic dodges the question, or, claims the FDA simply doesn't understand their advanced proprietary science, the patient knows to walk away.
The clinicians in our sources offer one final piece of overarching advice to their patients, too. True medical breakthroughs are highly specific. They target specific cellular pathways. So, if a clinic claims their exosome injection cures everything from wrinkles and joint pain to multiple sclerosis, it likely cures nothing.
It is basically the modern cellular equivalent of a 19th century tonic claiming to cure all ailments.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together for you. We started with a billboard promising a miracle, and regulatory agencies flashing warning signs. The underlying science of exosomes, these microscopic cellular text messages, is a thrilling frontier. Dedicated researchers are moving this forward the right way through legitimate Phase 1 and Phase 2 trials.
But the commercial market has simply jumped the gun. They are commercializing the hype before the science is actually settled, and ethical clinicians are left playing defense.
Which is a tough job.
It is. They are tasked with using empathy to understand why a high seeker might distrust the conventional system, then educating them on the biological reality of the regulations and giving them the hard facts needed to navigate safely through a landscape of predatory marketing.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reminds us that true precision medicine requires immense patience. The rigorous clinical trial process proving safety, establishing dosing, and verifying efficacy that exists to protect us. Bypassing those safety protocols for a quick, expensive shortcut carries profound physical risks.
It really raises an important question about how we view medical progress. We all want the future of medicine to arrive tomorrow, but the actual work of proving a therapy is safe takes years of meticulous, unglamorous data collection.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. We spent this entire deep dive talking about the risks of manufacturing these cellular text messages in a lab and putting them into your body as a treatment. The therapeutic side.
Right, which is where all the regulatory friction currently exists.
But consider the diagnostic side of this biology. Your body is producing and circulating exosomes right now. If exosomes are constantly broadcasting the real-time status of your cells, indicating what tissue is healthy, what is inflamed, and what is mutating, what happens when we finally figure out how to accurately decode that language?
That is a fascinating area of research.
Could a simple blood test, reading your body's natural exosome traffic, one day completely replace invasive biopsies? Could it predict a disease years before you ever feel a single symptom?
The concept of a liquid biopsy based on exosome traffic is an entirely different, yet equally revolutionary side of the science. It shifts the focus from injecting foreign material to simply reading the body's own internal communication network.
It's the other side of the coin to watch out for.
Huh.
So the next time you're driving down the highway and you see that billboard promising a cellular miracle for your joints, you'll know exactly what's actually in that syringe. You'll know why the FDA treats it as a biological drug and exactly what questions you need to ask to protect yourself. Until next time, keep diving deep.